In November of 1920, at the end of one of the worst waves of political terror the country had ever seen, the United States elected a president with a one-word promise: normal. That was the whole pitch. A return to normalcy. The word was so strange that critics accused Warren Harding of simply making it up. A made-up word, carrying the full weight of a nation's longing. And the normal his 16 million voters ached to get back to? It sat directly behind a pandemic, a mail bomb campaign, and the worst attack Wall Street had ever seen. Hold that thought. We're going to stand in that wreckage soon enough. Because 100 years later, you've said that sentence. Out loud, this year, maybe today. This isn't normal. A pandemic that rewired everything and never gave it all back. Political violence back in the headlines. Machines that talk now. That write, that draw, that might want your job. One word, unprecedented. Worn so smooth it doesn't mean anything at all. And underneath it, the hum. The feeling that the world came off its hinges somewhere, and nobody will say when. So let me say the thing that nobody says. You're right that it's crazy, but you're wrong that the feeling is new. Which leaves exactly two possibilities. Either the world has been breaking, non-stop, for 200 years, or the word was never load-bearing to begin with. Was it ever normal? Everyone who has ever said that sentence thought they were the first. So let's check. 200 years of archives. Run the way you live in the present, as a feed, one swipe at a time. The sitting president of the United States shoots the former secretary of the Treasury. Hear that again. Aaron Burr rows across the Hudson at dawn. He levels a pistol at Alexander Hamilton, the man who built the country's financial system. He shoots him. Hamilton dies the next day. Now, the detail that should be impossible. Burr gets indicted in 2 states, in New Jersey for murder. He never stands trial for any of it. Instead, he goes back to his day job, presiding over the United States Senate, where he runs the impeachment trial of a Supreme Court justice while under indictment for murder. A newspaper of the day says he did it, quote, with dignity and impartiality of an angel, but with the rigor of a devil. The scandal didn't end his career. It didn't even end his work week. A senator is beaten nearly to death at his own desk in the Senate chamber. A congressman named Preston Brooks finds Senator Charles Sumner at his desk and beats him with the cane until the cane breaks apart, over an anti-slavery speech Sumner gave 2 days earlier. Sumner needs roughly 3 years to recover to fully return to duty. Massachusetts reelects him anyway, and leaves the chair empty on purpose. And Brooks? Admirers mail him replacement canes. Some inscribed, "Hit him again." He is fined $300, survives an expulsion vote, resigns, and gets reelected almost immediately. That's the feeling, isn't it? Not when violence happens, that the other side cheers. And the newspapers, North and South, reached for the same diagnosis you reach for now. The country has gone mad. The times are unlike any other. Your sentence in another time. At least 36 mail bombs addressed to judges, politicians, and tycoons. Now, the feed gets fast, because 1919 is drinking from the same fire hose you are. The flu pandemic is still killing on its way out the door. It will leave an estimated 675,000 Americans dead. In April, dynamite starts arriving in the mail, addressed to judges, politicians, and businessmen, including John D. Rockefeller. In June, bombs go off in 8 cities on the same evening. One blows the front off the Attorney General's own house. The next year, a horse-drawn wagon parked on Wall Street explodes into a lunchtime crowd and kills 38 people. The deadliest terrorist bombing in American history up to that point. Nobody was ever charged. Nobody ever solved it. So what did America want, standing in all that wreckage? You already know, because that's where we came in. 7 weeks after the wagon exploded, 16 million Americans voted for that one-word promise. This is the wreckage a return to normalcy was standing in. A word, pointing backward, at years that were on fire. And I know, the black and white stuff doesn't count. Fine. 20,000 people fill Madison Square Garden for a pro-Nazi rally. More than 20,000 Americans pack one of the most famous arenas in the world for a rally billed around a mass demonstration for true Americanism. On stage, a George Washington portrait, 3 stories tall, flanked by swastikas. Tens of thousands of counter-protesters seethe outside. And the 20,000 inside? They bought tickets. They watched the show. They went home and had dinner. Hold on to that dinner. 1968 arrives as one continuous alert. January, the Tet Offensive. April 4th, Martin Luther King Jr. is assassinated, and unrest breaks out in more than 100 cities. 9 weeks later, Robert Kennedy is shot. He dies June 6th. In August, police violence outside the Democratic National Convention in Chicago airs live while the crowd chants, "The whole world is watching." An official report to the federal commissioner later calls it a police riot. 2 assassinations in 9 weeks, 100 cities burning, live on television. Let's keep scrolling. Early 70s. America has a bombing problem. Not just one attack, a wave. FBI figures from the era count more than 2,500 bombings on U.S. soil in one 18-month stretch, from 1971 to 72. Nearly 5 a day. And the sick part? Only about 1% killed anyone, so it never made the front page. 5 bombings a day, and the country treated it like weather. The same years gave us the skyjacking epidemic, and this one isn't about violence. It's about how fast the insane became routine. Between 1968 and 1972, U.S. commercial planes are hijacked more than 130 times, at peak roughly once a week. The demand was so routine it had a script, "Take me to Cuba." Airlines kept Caribbean landing charts in their cockpits and told pilots to simply comply. Just fly the man to Havana. The metal detectors you've walked through your whole life weren't standard for every passenger until January 5th of 1973. Until then, boarding a plane mostly ran on the honor system during the bombing wave. Freeze it there. And notice what I just did to you. I fed you the worst nights of 200 years, back to back, and you felt the pattern in your gut. That's not proof that the eras were equally as bad. It's proof that the method works on anybody, including the version that lives in your pocket. So here's one thing the feed does prove. Not one of those years passed the calm test. Every generation you just scrolled past said the same version of your sentence. The caning generation said it. The Wall Street generation said it. The 1968 generation said it while their cities were actually on fire. And I've been running this test on a single country's archive, America's, because nobody talks about normal louder. But the complaint is older than any nation. 2,000 years ago, a Roman poet ran the math on his own era. Our parents, he wrote, were worse than our grandparents. We are worse than our parents. And our children will be worse than us. That's Horace. Rome's fall was still 5 centuries away. But the twist matters more than the pattern. Every one of those generations also said the other sentence. We just need to get back to normal. And every single time, the year they wanted to go back to itself had been called crazy while it was happening. The people of 2020 ached for 2019. The same 2019 everyone was calling the craziest year yet in real time. So if it was never normal, what the hell have we all been asking to go back to? Nothing. That's the answer. There was never a room to go back to. There was only a word, and the word has been doing all the work. We are a century deep into homesickness for a place that never appeared on any map. And here's the strange part. The word has a birth certificate. Normal is not ancient wisdom. It is a piece of equipment. Somebody built it for a job, and then other people picked it up and started swinging at things it was never designed to touch. The whole story fits 3 objects, small enough to hold in one hand. First object. Picture a mason pressing an L-shaped tool against a beam to check if it stands true. In Latin, that tool is a norma, a carpenter's square. Its whole job, is this a right angle, yes or no? When normal walked into English in the 1600s, that's all it meant. Perpendicular, 90 degrees, nothing else. A wall could be normal. You could not. Any more than your childhood could be a wrench. Then, somebody turned the square sideways and held it against people. Dictionaries date the people sense, normal people, normal life, to around 1828, which is a hell of a promotion for a workbench tool. France had already built the pipeline. In 1794, it founded the École Normale, and a normal school meant a norm-setting school, a teacher-training college for one correct way to teach. There is a town in Illinois named Normal, after its normal school, one correct way, franchised. Doctors of that era could only define a normal organ by what it was not diseased. That's the entire spec of the standard you have spent your life failing to meet, not crooked, not sick. And about Harding's critics, the ones who swore he made normalcy up, a word that had been sitting in the dictionary since 1857. The sharpest pundits in the country mocked it as fake, and not one of them looked it up. Nobody checks the facts, ever. Then, the math showed up and made it feel like physics. In the 1830s, a Belgian astronomer who took a bell curve, a trick astronomers used to cancel out telescope errors, and pointed it at people. Chests, heights, weights, the same curve appeared, and he crowned the middle of it the average man, and he treated the average as ideal. Not common, ideal. And before you file that under quaint history, know that you have been graded, this decade, by a telescope repair trick, one of his formulas, weight set against height, and was renamed the Body Mass Index in 1972, and is sitting in your medical chart right now. And then, the square became a weapon. And this is where the jokes stop. In 1851, a Louisiana doctor published in a respectable medical journal of the slaveholding South a new disease he called drapetomania. His own title stated what it was, the disease, quote, causing slaves to run away. The prescribed cure was a whip. Wanting to be free, held against the yardstick, was a medical condition. That was the object lesson, and it never expires. A tool for checking beams became a tool for checking humans, and whoever holds it decides who's crooked. Second object, a small blade, thin and medical. December 1799. Washington wakes with a bad throat infection, and the finest doctors available are summoned. Understand who these men were, the most eminent physicians of their world, standing on 2,000 years of consensus, and the consensus was bloodletting, cutting veins open on purpose as medicine, because draining the sick was believed to rebalance the body. They took an estimated 40% of his blood. He died. Many historians think the treatment got him before the disease could. This was not malpractice by the standards of the day. This was the standard. Nobody in that room was a quack, and that's the part that should scare you. Every man was performing excellence exactly as his heir defined it, which is the lesson the Lancet teaches. Normal is invisible from the inside. It never feels like an option. It feels like the room. Normal is the water, you are the fish. And no fish in history has ever once felt wet. Within living memory, about 42% of U.S. adults smoked, and you could smoke on an airplane, and nobody gasped, because it was not a habit, it was the air. Which brings me, unfortunately, to you. It's 2 a.m. You are in bed, in the dark, holding a version that lives in your pocket, doing rounds through the feed. One more scroll, one more headline. You feel worse, so you keep on going, because staying informed is the treatment, and if you feel worse afterward, you clearly aren't drained enough. This is bloodletting. A vein opens nightly, in good faith, on the best advice of the age. Everyone is certain the draining is the cure. The phone is our lancet. We hold it to our own throats and call it staying healthy. And the waking itself? Not a malfunction either. Historians digging through centuries of diaries and court records found that pre-industrial Europeans slept in 2 shifts. A first sleep, then an hour or so awake around midnight, spent in prayer, chores, sex, then a second sleep. That was ordinary for centuries. Then, artificial light and the factory shift consolidated the night into one block, and the same historians argue that midnight waking got reclassified as a disorder. Sit with that. The oldest sleep schedule on record was measured against the factory whistle and came back defective. The square got held against the night itself, and the night came out crooked. Third object, life size, 1945. The Cleveland Health Museum unveils Norma, a statue of a statistically average woman, sculpted from the measurements of some 15,000 women, the average man's granddaughter given a face. The city's newspaper ran a contest with the museum to find the real woman who matched her, and nearly 4,000 women mailed in their measurements. The winner, the closest match of nearly 4,000, missed close to half of Norma's measurements. The most normal woman of an entire city could produce half a failed test. Norma matched nobody, because Norma was never a woman. She was arithmetic wearing a face. 5 years later, the same idea got tested at speed. In 1950, the Air Force measured 4,063 pilots on the 10 body dimensions that matter the most in a cockpit, because the cockpit had been built to fit the average man. The number of pilots that came out average in all 10 was 0. Not a handful, 0, out of 4,063. The average man flew no planes, because he did not exist. And notice the fix. They made the cockpit adjustable, an idea that now lives in every seat you slide forward. They did not fix the pilots, they fixed the yardstick. So there's your answer. The real one this time. Normal was never a test you were failing, because it never was a test at all. It is a statue, and a statue that fits nobody. Not one contestant, not one pilot, not 1 year. In 2023, Pew asked Americans, and 58% said life was worse today for people like them than 50 years ago. 23% said better. 50 years before 2023 was 1973. Watergate, the oil crisis, the tail end of the bombing wave, the year the airport metal detectors went in. That is the golden age a majority are homesick for. The year the country started walking itself through metal detectors. No year had ever passed the test. We are nostalgic for the statue. Now, that dinner I told you to hold on to. February 20th, 1939. The garden empties, and 20,000 people who spent their evening under a Washington portrait flanked by swastikas walk out into New York's night, and they go home, and they have dinner. That same year, in Paris, France guillotined Eugen Wiedemann in the open street, and the crowd dabbed handkerchiefs in his blood for souvenirs, and the country was rattled enough to move executions behind the walls for good. And then, Paris had dinner too. Because the dinner is the tell. In the worst year you can name, somewhere it was a Tuesday, and the radio was full of ruin, and somebody set the table anyway. Every horror movie in the feed, the duel, the canes, the bombs, the hijackings, happened in the years where dinner got made every single night. Normal was never the world being calm, because the world had never once been calm. Normal is dinner during the fire. Just Tuesday, all the way down. It's the most durable thing our species does, and you have been doing it all along. The thing you've been asking to get back is the thing you never left. As for the yardstick, somebody wrote it. The square, the diagnosis, the disorder, the statue, every one of them came out of a pen, and the pen is just one more object a hand can hold. Whoever holds the tool decides who's crooked. That has been the scam the entire time, and also the way out, because what is written can be argued with, and what is invented can be declined, so just put the damn thing down. And tonight, when you snap awake at 2 a.m. and the dread comes looking for you, remember what hour it really is. It's the old watch, the one between sleeps, the hour your ancestors kept for prayer, chores, sex for centuries, before the light of the factory took it and the new rulebook called what was left a disorder. You are not broken, you are on a schedule. Leave the lancet on the nightstand. The feed will be burning in the morning. It has been burning since 1804, so go get your second sleep. And if the dread is still there when you wake, fine, good even. That feeling, the certainty that this year is uniquely on fire, is the one thing every panicked, bloodied, bomb-rattled dinner-cooking year in this whole story has in common. It's older than the word. It's more honest than the statue. It's the most normal thing in history. It has always felt exactly like this. Not normal.